Leave it to the software. Hello and welcome everyone to World Series News, a special edition this Sunday afternoon here in Australia. I have got Senator Ralph Babet standing by. There's a lot that I've been after to talk to Ralph about, and he's very generously provided us with some time this afternoon to talk about a number of different issues. And I'm going to bring him in straight away because his time is invaluable, and we've got him right now. Ralph, welcome for the first time to World Series News.
G'day, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm a big fan of yours. You are doing God's work as far as I'm concerned, and that is bringing the truth out to the public, to the masses that are not going to hear the truth from the mainstream media. The mainstream media, we both know this, they've lied to all of us. They're dodgy. They can't be trusted. And guys like yourself, guys and girls like yourself, provide an invaluable service to the Australian people. So thank you, Jason, and for everything that you do.
You know something, just on a light note, I tried my hardest to outdress you today. I thought Sunday I might get you. I still can't do it. You're still the best dressed man in Parliament.
Oh, look, I've got 5 years to go, so you might get me one of these days. So we'll keep doing these things, and we'll see how we go one time in the future. But, once again, thank you so much.
Good on you. Look, I really appreciate it. There's a number of different issues I want to touch on today, and I'm just going to give our audience just a brief outline. First of all, I want to talk to you about central bank digital currency. I also want to talk to you about some of the ramifications of what's going on at the moment right now in terms of discrimination against people who go against the system in terms of banking. I want to talk to you about obviously, I want to get a comment about Gladys Berejiklian's situation, also the East Safety Commissioner and what that means in terms of misinformation. And there's a big story going around at the moment that's come out of Canada in terms of a lady that wasn't even allowed to face the court to get an operation that she desperately needed a transplant, and she's headed off to the United States. I want to talk to you about that. So there's a lot of different issues I want to get through. So I'll get started right now. The first story is this one, Ralph. Central bank digital currency aren't about solving today's problem. And that's a headline that's just come out. You can see there, June 30, from Dilip Rao, a former Ripple executive who's now leading Australia's CBDC pilot. It's a strange story. I'll give you a bit more information here. He says central bank digital currencies may not solve any problems faced today, but could be the answer to ones not even fathomed yet, according to this particular pilot. It's an odd comment to make when everyone seems to be in such a hurry to change the currency to central bank digital currency. They want to explore the use of cases of a potential CBDC. And check this comment out. It may not solve a problem today, but maybe it solves a problem the day after tomorrow. Haven't we got enough issues at the moment to worry about that we're trying to just push this through?
We've got plenty of issues, but for your viewers at home, the ones that may not be familiar with the central bank digital currency, the ones that may think that it's a conspiracy theory, let me tell you this, it is absolutely not a conspiracy theory. Our central bank, our very own central bank right here in Australia is doing a pilot, is doing a test right now of CBDC. But what does CBDC stand for? Central bank digital currency. What is it? It's digital money, kind of like what you have in your account right now if you go onto your net banking, with one key difference. It's based off blockchain technology. What does that mean? It means the government has full control over your money. They can tell where you spend your money, what you spend your money on, of course, how much you've got left, and all sorts of other metrics around how you use your money. So you kind of got to think of it like a digital coupon, not like the cash that you're familiar with at the moment. And because it's a digital coupon, they can manipulate that currency. Let's say they set a negative interest rate on your money, which means that your money diminishes every single week or every single month or whatever they may or may not decide in the future, unless you use that money. So it's a way for them to have full control over your life using the financial system. So the CBDC, if you really think about it, it is more dangerous to your freedom right now as a free citizen of Australia than a standing army. Because if there was a standing army at the gate coming into this country to invade us, you would know exactly where to target your anger and your animosity towards that standing army. With this, it is taking us over by stealth. You will lose what little freedom you have left. Now, they're talking about, yes, it's not needed now, but one day it will be needed. But let me give you an example of how it might be used one day. This is a very simple example, but I think this could actually happen. Let's say the government says to you, because of our commitments to net zero, Mr. or Mrs. Australian citizen, this month, because you spent too much money on red meat, you've bought too much red meat, next month, you're restricted. You cannot buy red meat next month. Therefore, when you go to the shopping center, when you go to the store to do your weekly shop, you try and swipe your card, but your card doesn't work on red meat. You need to eat the bugs instead. Let's say you want to go on an overseas flight, but the government says, sorry, you've used too much carbon allowance this month. You can't have an overseas flight. You go onto the airline website, you punch in your credit card details, or your card details, I should say, and you can't make that purchase. This is the real power of CBDC. This is what I think it will be used for in the future. And if you think for one damn second that your government, your Australian government, won't do that to you, look what they did to you during the COVID times and are still doing to many people today. To think that the government is some benevolent force for good is incorrect. The government is always a force for control and to take away your rights and your freedoms. It is the ever continuing fight of freedom versus big government. So CBDC, you must reject it. Do everything you can to push back against it.
Well said, Ralph. That's a really, really good, simple explanation for people to understand what's going on. Now, I just want to show you a story that's just popped up today. Check this out. The Bank of Ireland has been forced to open on the weekend after online services have crashed. I'll give you some more detail here. It has been forced to open 91 branches on Saturday after its online banking services crashed. Customers attempting to use the app were met with an error message saying SL certificate is invalid, the server cannot be trusted. A warning flare for the dangers of a future CBDC. That's a big deal because if a hacker gets into the system, and we've seen it now with Optus and we've seen it with Medibank and these huge corporations, this is a big deal. And of course, the other one in this green power obsession, what happens if you have a blackout and you just need to happen to pay for something and you've only got access to a central bank digital currency that you run off your smartphone? What would happen then, Ralph?
It would be mayhem. That's what would happen. The whole of our society would fall apart very, very quickly, which is why I'm such a big proponent of cash. We need to keep cash in our financial system. Now, I know that some people will say that, cash is inconvenient. It's so much easier just to tap your phone and walk away or swipe your card or whatever it is. But you need to understand that without cash, all that you're doing is you're handing over ultimate control over your life to the government. You essentially become a persona non grata. You don't exist as a human being anymore if you don't have access to the financial system, because you can't pay your bills, you can't buy things from the shops, you can't be independent. They have you by the kahunas, to put it in a way. So you must always fight to maintain cash, no matter how inconvenient you may think it is crucial, absolutely crucial to staying free, to having a free society. That way you're able to operate outside of the realms of control of the government to a certain extent. I mean, if they really wanted to, they could crack down a lot harder on cash as well and make life even more difficult. But it does give you an option, at least, of having no option.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I want to move along to the other big story at the moment that's happening in Australian Parliament, and it is a precursor for what's coming from around the world, and we're referring specifically to the E-Safety Commissioner and this idea of regulating or controlling and disinformation. I'm going to put some information up on the screen here just to run through a few things for us. Now, this is from an ABC article asking why isn't the government just banning misinformation? And the idea is, of course, that to start with, there are issues with defining what is and isn't misinformation. The draft bill defines it as unintentionally false, misleading or deceptive, and disinformation is defined as misinformation but intentionally disseminated to cause harm. Freedom of speech concerns naturally arrive when the government views something as false, misleading or deceptive, but the person publishing the information doesn't. Now, that is critical because the government has been pushing an agenda for 3 years. And of course, they seem to have got so much of it wrong. And those that were once saying that was misinformation, all of a sudden it's turned around.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. So for those that don't know what's happening is the government essentially wants to install a 1984 style Ministry of Truth, Jason, that censors any views that oppose or question the establishment narrative. Now, it may sound like hyperbole, but this is absolutely true. And in my opinion, Jason, it's the greatest threat that our nation faces right now. Now, if this bill is passed, it would allow, this is what it would allow. It would allow the issuing of huge fines to social media companies if they fail to remove mis or disinformation from their platforms. But Jason, who decides, Jason, what is misinformation and what is disinformation? Who makes that choice? I'll tell you who makes that choice.
Who is it?
You guessed it. Everyone at home, you guessed it. The government and the people who control what they do, what they say behind this curtain, they're the ones who decides what is mis or disinformation. This is the same type of people who told you that COVID-19 was deadly when it was in fact mild, almost 100% of healthy people, and who told you that the COVID-19 mRNA injection would stop you catching and then spreading COVID, which it didn't, and that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which was not true, Jason, or that Australia would never, ever introduce a GST, or that we would never introduce a carbon tax, or that the rain that falls would never be enough to fill our dams again due to global warming.
And I remember that fellow. That was, I'll just bring myself back in. That fellow was Tim Flannery, who, guess what? He's back out there and he's famous again because he's got a brand new green plan. It's just unbelievable. I want to put something up on the screen now. Many people haven't seen it, and I'm not sure if you've heard of this particular doctor, but his name is Sunil Dand. He works out of America, and I followed him on YouTube in early COVID when I was doing the COVID statistical reporting. And I used to get quite cranky with him because he couldn't see what I could see. Well, then, of course, he changed and he went from 10,000 followers to about 100,000 followers. Check out this tweet he put out just the other day. It's astonishing. Sunil Dand, I am a physician. I kept following the science and found the money. I kept following the experts and found the money. I kept following the mainstream media and found the money. So I started following the misinformation and found the truth. This is a huge statement from a doctor who is just out there. He can still publish on YouTube. He reports the facts, but he has made a very big point there. So what happens when today's misinformation is tomorrow's truth? Will we be able to sue the government who's excused themselves from misinformation if it comes to a situation, Ralph, that it's stopped our livelihoods because we're actually reporting truth?
Look, what's happening right now across the entire Western world is absolute madness. We've got a situation now where the establishment is doing everything that they can to stifle divergent views in every way that they can. And they're doing it because their narrative is falling apart. People are waking up to the authoritarian behaviors of the establishment, and people are frankly sick of it. People are pushing back. And instead of changing, instead of saying, let's do better for our countries, for our people, let's stop going down the path that we're going right now, these authoritarians are instead saying, hey, let's silence every single person that disagrees with us. Let's shut down debate. And let's go down that route instead. And you know what, Jason? It's not going to work. People are waking up to the lies of the establishment. People value freedom. As Trump likes to call us, we are the silent majority. That's what we are, the silent majority. We're not vocal like the hard left is. We're not trying to take over institutions. Why? Because we just want to be left alone, raise our families, go to work, pay our taxes. That's it. That's what we want. But the establishment is now pushing too hard. They've pushed our hand, and the pendulum is going to swing hard the other way, as it always does. And we are going to see people waking up, pushing back in a very, very big way in the next few years. So hang in there, be brave, be tough. Courage is contagious. Things will get better, but we have to get in there. We have to make our voice heard, and we have to keep fighting for the truth and for our rights.
Yeah, well said. I'm just going to put another a topic here just straight off the Safety Commissioner's website. Just check this out. it proposes, this idea that only government has got the power to give you the accurate information. How can I tell if information is true? Look out for content that seems very one-sided. Ask yourself these questions. Is it from a trustworthy source known for being honest about information? Does the headline match the content? Are different views included? Do the quotes make sense and match the rest of the story? Rah, rah, rah. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but for mine, that's a form of discrimination. Is it from a trustworthy source? Now, during COVID, I had a couple of reviews put onto my World Series news page for people that were completely following a different narrative, and it affected my review. It dropped from 5 stars down to 3.5 stars. I can't challenge the person. I can't remove the review, but it's this idea that because we're small, that this has a much bigger effect on us. So it would mean that the average person listening right now, and we're only giving the facts of the matter and a perspective, but also showing both sides of the story, may look at this and go, it's just nonsense, it's pretend, it's fake. But the opposite is true. For mine, that post from the e-safety commissioner is in itself discriminatory and a kind of a form of misinformation, if you will, because it is not allowing a level playing field.
Look, Jason, it's not the role of government to tell people what they can and they cannot say.
Exactly.
It is not the role of government to fact check citizens' opinion. It is not the role of government to deem certain views permissible and other views, no matter how silly or inaccurate they might be, as off limits. If this bill passes, Jason, you can kiss goodbye to debate and you can kiss goodbye to all sorts of freedoms that we enjoy today, right? But this bill, I'll actually go into this in just very, very briefly. This bill lists a range of content which is excluded from being called misinformation. But just who is exempt from this censorship? Let me tell you, our universities are exempt. Mainstream media is exempt. I'm sure that won't surprise any of your viewers out there. Yeah. Federal, state, and local government is excluded. Now, people at home, are you surprised? I'm not surprised. So basically, it's a free pass for everyone who diligently followed the government advice during the pandemic. But the rest of us, us plebs, us people who want to think freely, we're going to get censored.
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. And Jason, the government is empowering unelected bureaucrats to enforce the government position on issues. This is anti-democratic. It's something we'd see in communist China or North Korea, because social media, Jason, is the modern day town square. Yes. That's what it is. And this bill gags the discussion in the town square, limiting you to government-approved speech. That's what it does.
Yeah, well said. And it does have real-world implications today, Ralph, because we've now learned that not one but 2 well-known people have had their bank accounts or their ability to bank taken away from them. This is the first story that we learned. Nigel Farage has warned Britain is lost after his bank accounts are mysteriously closed. Now, he has been banking with a particular organisation for 40 years as a private citizen and 30 years with the same organisation as a business. Now, not only was his one bank took him out, but we've now learnt that he's approached 6 or 7 more banks who have also wholly rejected him. Now, this is a huge danger. Now, I'm going to show you another headline now. This was in the Daily Mail, and it refers to another person, Reverend Richard Fothergill, who was also pushed out for his comments. Wrong one. Check this out. A UK bank closed down a vicar's bank account after he protested against gender ideology. Yorkshire Building Society shut down Anglican Church leader Reverend Richard Fothergill after he politely spoke out against transgender ideology being pushed on society. Ralph, this is going way too far already.
It has gone way too far. It went way too far years ago. But going back to Mr. Farage has been debanked. 7 banks, I believe he said. I watched his video earlier today. 7 banks have denied him a bank account because they are saying he's what they call a politically exposed person. Now, that term comes straight from the European Union, and they've used this as the way to remove him from all financial institutions as it stands today. Now, if you don't, first of all, I believe that a bank having access to banking facilities is a human right. It is a human right. And
Yes.
it is not a privilege. It is a human right. Because if you do not have access to banking, you are a persona non grata. You don't exist as a person. You cannot function in society. On one hand, it's sad that the banks have this much power over us as a people, as a society. That's sad. But on the other hand, we also have to realize that this is the way that things are for now. And we have to play within the framework that we have available to us at the moment. But a bank should never be able to debank someone, because let's face it, let's be brutally honest, for their political views and their political leanings. This is a very, very, very dangerous precedent. And it is only a matter of time until these kind of things start happening here in Australia. I keep harping on my social media whenever I do an interview about freedoms and things like this. This is what I mean. Without a bank account, if they shut you down for your political views, they are taking away your freedom to speak. They are taking away your freedom to be a part of the political debate in the country. They are asking you to self-censor, because what they're very clearly saying is if you go against the preconceived narrative that we as the establishment say that you must follow, the doctrine that you must follow, that you must obey, if you don't do that, we're going to remove you from the financial system and essentially make you a nobody. Because if you don't have access to a bank account, you can't function, you can't pay your bills, you can't earn an income, you can't go to the shops and buy food, you can't go out for dinner at a restaurant, especially if they end up banning cash. So this is very, very dangerous.
It certainly is, and this is almost biblical at this point, isn't it? That you will be excluded from society if you don't take the medicine, so to speak. Now, speaking of medicine, there's two stories I want to talk about, but there's one that's just popped up. It is truly shocking. I'm going to share you the details right now. This is a story here of a young actress, Katarina Pavlov. She's committed suicide, but she's committed suicide at a Swiss clinic at 41 years of age. Now, there's two sides to this thing. I'm going to blow them up for you now. Look at this information. Why did Katarina Pavlov commit suicide? The untimely death, a renowned Slovakian model and Hollywood actress, has evoked deep contemplation regarding the circumstances surrounding her tragic demise. Based on the information, this is a news article, Katarina made the fateful decision to conclude her life at a specialised clinic in Switzerland that offered assisted suicide following a prolonged battle with a severe illness. It is worth noting that Katarina, being an actress, was obliged to comply with the vaccine mandates imposed by the entertainment industry and unions in order to sustain a career. So they kind of blur it. Now watch this. This is from Katarina herself. Hi guys, over the last 10 days, I've become severely ill and again homebound, unable to do much. My body is too weak to fight this illness and I have no more strength. So I made the decision to end my life at the Pegasus Association in Switzerland. I was diagnosed with untreatable chronic neurological illness, MECFS, caused by, look at that, BOOSTERJAB, on top of having suspected respiratory ALS. This illness made me disabled, unable to work or have social life, and unable to enjoy all life together. Breathing have become more and more difficult and painful for me, and my lung function has been declining. Thank you for all your friendship and support over the last year. I received over a year ago destroyed my health, my body, and my life completely. There is no other way to end my suffering other than the decision I've made. Ralph, this would have to be possibly the worst story I have ever heard of in terms of governments, power, coercion, misinformation, taking a life. And in Australia, we learned that only 1 in 20 are even receiving compensation from the vaccine injury plan so far. Have you got something to throw at me back here? This is just shocking.
Look, it's shocking. First of all, we live in a society that increasingly values life less and less and less. I mean, we've seen this in Canada coming to play at the moment with the medical assistance in dying laws that they have over there right now, where medically assisted suicide is growing at an exponential rate. And
Yes.
so it basically harkens back to what we saw in the 30s and the 40s. And I don't say this slightly, in the 30s and the 40s under the Nazis regime, where they would deem certain people to be undesirable, so they would end their lives forcibly. In a way, we're seeing that play out again in the 20th century right now as I live and breathe today. It's not right. I think that what we should be doing is we should be protecting life as a society. We should be doing everything we can to make sure that people don't go down these dark paths, and advocating for a society where human life is put on a pedestal as being extremely important, and medical assisted dying is something that people should not even be considering. This is only going to get worse as they expand upon this throughout the West, as they make it easier for people to access these services. We're going to see more and more of this kind of stuff happening, and I'm not okay with it. We need to go back to God. We need to go back to traditional values, and we need to reject all this woke ideology that we're seeing run rampant in our societies today, particularly in the West. It's just in the West. And I don't agree with any of it, and I want it to end, basically. I want to put an end to this kind of stuff. It's wrong.
Absolutely, it's wrong. And as you said, and rightly so, in Canada, there are now people younger than 30 years of age with autism that are selecting to be assisted in their suicides at this point. There is no way in the world that when they started this, it was meant for people who were terminal, who their end of life was in the future. They could see it, and they had a reasonable amount of expectation how long their life would be. That made sense. But a 29-year-old checking out because they're autistic with all of the services available today is unacceptable. And any government doing it, as you said, no longer values life.